Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going deep into the Atlantic forest to uncover the story of a bird that was once lost to time. The cherry-throated tanager. I'm Hari.
And I'm Kimi, and I'm excited to dive in with you, Hari. This bird's story is really one of rediscovery and resilience.
It really is. And you know what I find fascinating about this bird? It was thought to be extinct for over 100 years. Just poof, gone, like a feathery phantom.
Yeah, it's true. Only known from a single specimen collected way back in 1870, it was like this beautiful mystery hidden in the forest for generations, and then bam.
They found it again.
Exactly, rediscovered in 1998, like something out of a birder's dream.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar with this avian enigma, what makes the cherry-throated tanager so special aside from its dramatic reappearance?
Well, first of all, let's talk about its looks. I mean, have you seen this bird? It's striking gray, black and white plumage.
It's like a dapper little tuxedo.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And then there's this pop of color, a brilliant red throat patch, like a splash of paint on a canvas. The males puff out these patches during displays, attract mates, defend their territory.
Nature's own power suit. And speaking of that red, I was reading that the color comes from carotenoids, which they get from their diet.
Oh, that's right. So the vibrancy of their color could actually signal their health and foraging skills to potential mates. Like, hey, look at me. I'm a healthy guy. I can find the best bugs.
This little bird flashing its resume through its throat feathers.
Exactly. And another interesting thing about these tanagers, they have these surprisingly large home ranges for a bird their size.
Really?
Yeah, and they often live in flocks up to 8 individuals. So you can imagine navigating those social dynamics in a shrinking habitat like the Atlantic forest must be a challenge.
Absolutely. So what do we know about how they handle those challenges? Like, what's their diet? What are their foraging strategies?
Well, they're primarily insectivores, gleaning caterpillars, ants, other invertebrates from branches. They're especially fond of branches covered in lichen.
So they've carved out this niche for themselves in the forest.
Exactly, using their agility and sharp eyesight to exploit a food source that other birds might miss.
So not just a pretty face, but a skilled forager too. But as we know, those foraging habits, and really their entire survival, are tied to the health of the Atlantic forest, which unfortunately is facing some serious threats.
That's right. Deforestation is a huge problem, driven by agricultural expansion, illegal logging. It's fragmented the forest, leaving these isolated patches that are struggling to support the incredible biodiversity that once thrived there. And it's those isolated patches that make those large home ranges even more crucial for these birds. They need enough space to find food mates' nesting sites.
It makes you wonder how they navigate those territories and interact with each other, especially in a fragmented habitat.
Yeah, there's still so much we don't know. But researchers have observed some really interesting behaviors. Like they've seen these tanagers participating in mixed species foraging flocks.
Mixed species flock.
Yeah, often led by other bird species. So you'll have a group of different birds all foraging together. And it seems like the cherry-throated tanagers might be benefiting from the vigilance and foraging expertise of their flock mates.
It's like they've formed these little avian alliances to improve their chances of survival in this challenging environment.
It really is incredible. And it makes protecting these interconnected relationships even more important. So speaking of protection, let's talk about that rediscovery story. The one that feels like something out of a naturalist's dream.
Oh yeah, it's a great one. Picture this, a group of ornithologists in 1998. They're venturing into a remote fragment of the Atlantic forest, armed with their binoculars, and this sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, the cherry-throated tanager wasn't gone forever.
And then they hear it, that distinctive call, a series of high-pitched notes echoing through the trees.
I can only imagine the feeling. Must have been like a jolt of electricity.
Pure elation. For the scientific community, for conservationists, it was a sign that even in the face of all this habitat loss, these pockets of forest still held incredible value and that they deserved our protection.
It's like a reminder that nature can surprise us, and that even when we think something is lost, it might just be waiting to be rediscovered. So that rediscovery must have kicked off a wave of research, right? Scientists eager to learn as much as they could about this bird before it was too late.
Oh, absolutely. They wanted to understand its behavior, breeding habits, the specific threats it faced. And one of their most important tools became the tanager's call.
The call.
Yeah. Once they recorded it, they could use it to track the bird's movements through the dense undergrowth. It helped them map out territories, identify nesting sites. It was like a window into their world.
So the very thing that signaled the bird's return became a key to understanding its survival. And then in 2003, using those calls, researchers made another amazing discovery.
Right. They found a population of cherry-throated tanagers thriving in the Cates forest.
The Cates forest.
It's a relatively large and undisturbed area within the Atlantic forest of Espirito Santo. And within this forest, the tanagers weren't just surviving, they were potentially even thriving. It was like a beacon of hope.
It's incredible to think that there are places where this bird can still flourish. It really highlights the importance of protecting these remaining havens.
Absolutely. These areas aren't just refuges for endangered species. They're reservoirs of genetic diversity. They're like the insurance policy for the future, ensuring that these populations have the resilience to adapt to whatever challenges come their way.
These havens you mentioned, like the Cates forest, I'm curious about the specific conservation strategies that have been implemented there to protect the cherry-throated tanager.
Well, one of the key strategies has been the establishment of private reserves within the forest.
Private reserves.
Yeah, spearheaded by organizations like Save Brazil and the Marcos Daniel Institute. They provide this crucial layer of protection, safeguarding habitat from deforestation and fragmentation.
So it's like a safety net working alongside the larger protected areas.
Exactly, and it goes beyond just protecting the land itself. They've also implemented habitat restoration, planting native trees to reconnect fragmented patches, even controlling invasive species that might be competing with the tanager's food sources.
It sounds like a really comprehensive approach. You mentioned controlling invasive species, and I know predator control is also a big part of conservation efforts.
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's a delicate balance. The methods are tailored to the specific situation. In some cases, it might involve removing invasive predators like feral cats or rats that are wreaking havoc on native bird populations.
Right. Yes.
And in other cases, it might involve managing the populations of native predators that are putting too much pressure on the tanagers.
So it requires a deep understanding of the entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. And community engagement is also crucial to the success of these efforts.
Community engagement.
Yeah. Conservationists have been working closely with local communities, providing educational programs about the importance of biodiversity, promoting sustainable land management practices, even offering alternative livelihoods that reduce pressure on the forest.
So it's about recognizing that people are part of the ecosystem too.
Exactly. It's about finding solutions that benefit both humans and wildlife, and creating a sense of ownership and pride among local communities.
Which ultimately leads to more sustainable conservation efforts in the long run.
Right, and that's especially important in a place like the Atlantic forest, where many people rely on the forest for their livelihoods and cultural traditions.
It's a reminder that conservation isn't just about protecting species. It's about protecting the intricate web of life that connects us all. And speaking of connections, we've talked a lot about the cherry-throated tanager itself. But what about its role in the broader ecosystem?
That's a great point, Harry. The cherry-throated tanager, with its specialized diet and habitat requirements, acts as an indicator species.
Indicator species.
Yeah, its presence or absence tells us a lot about the overall health of the forest.
So if the tanagers are thriving, it means the ecosystem is doing well.
Exactly. There's enough food, suitable nesting sites, all the necessary ecological processes in place to support a diverse range of species.
So protecting the tanager essentially protects a whole suite of other plants and animals.
Exactly. It's a ripple effect of conservation benefits throughout the ecosystem. A reminder that even small actions can have far-reaching consequences.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the cherry-throated tanager, I'm left feeling both inspired and hopeful. Inspired by this bird's resilience, and hopeful that with continued conservation efforts, it can continue to thrive.
Me too, Harry. It's a story that highlights the beauty and fragility of life on Earth, and the importance of protecting these incredible ecosystems for generations to come.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey, Kimi, and to all our listeners out there. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Atlantic forest and the remarkable story of the cherry-throated tanager.